And we'd like to get started because we really have a wonderful program today and a lot of things to cover. So I want to just do a tiny bit of housekeeping first for everybody. And that would be that we have a speaker first. I'll be introducing him in a minute. Please hold your questions until Brent has finished his terrific talk. It just is easier for people to concentrate on the presentation if there aren't chat things going back and forth. I especially want to ask you not to answer questions that people might mistakenly put in the chat during the presentation that can be particularly distracting. Once the presentation is finished, yes, then you can put your questions in the chat box, and my fellow board member, John, will help me, and Mike will help also to sift through those and get the questions to Brent. Once we finish that first part of the meeting, which will be on invasive plant species in our very own Roaring Brook Lake district and area, then we're going to go over our district budget. The district budget meeting is coming up, and I'll repeat this later in the meeting, but it's coming up in a week. And we encourage as many people as possible to attend that district budget meeting. And finally, we will talk about people who would wish to volunteer to actually begin identifying and removing the local invasive plants on district properties. So there will be a volunteer task force organization that will go on towards the end of the meeting. If you can't stay, please get in contact with me by email at another time, and I'll make sure you get the information. And as always, we'll try to get the recording up on our website and try to get you the information that goes on here, even if you couldn't be here. And we are recording. We have over 25 people here now. This is really tremendous, and I thank all of you for coming. Brent Boscarino is a terrific person. Many of you, like me, have heard him speak here at Roaring Brook Lake for our garden club. Thank you, Lynn, for bringing him the first time. And I think you'll agree with me that he's a fabulous speaker, and we are very lucky to have him here. He is a member of the New York, New Jersey Trail Association, and I think they're in charge of their education program, so he couldn't be better. And he's going to teach us to identify these invasive plants on our own properties. It's very important that people be monitoring them, not just in the public areas, but on their own properties, and to talk to us about why we should do that. And with no further ado, I introduce you to Brent Boscarino.
Hi guys, I am really excited to be here this morning. Thank you so much, Anna, for that introduction and for inviting me here to be with you. It looks like it's going to be a nice day outside, so definitely get some fresh air after this presentation. Today's agenda, what we're going to do, I'll do a brief overview of invasive species ecology. So for those of you who don't know, what is an invasive species? Why should we care? And what role they play in our natural areas. So we'll go over some basics of that. And then we'll get into 5 common invasive plant species that I know that Anna had mentioned that you have on your own properties in and around Roaring Brook. So we'll be getting into that, how to ID them, as well as best management practices for how to remove them and what you guys can do as community members to help protect our natural areas. So it'll be a bit of a combination of some IDs with PowerPoint slides, as well as some field ID videos that I took. So even though we can't be together and I'm not doing a field walk with you guys, we'll at least show you some videos of some things out in the field and see those variations. And then we'll get into some helpful resources. For those of you who were able to participate in the previous webinar a few months back, I'll be introducing some good ID apps to help you guys in addition to what you're learning about today. I will distribute out some field ID guides afterwards that may be helpful to you. And just a reminder to, as Ina had pointed out, to stay muted to avoid some of the background noise. And I know I have helpers today to help me with that. Alrighty, just before we get right into all the plans, I just want to introduce, the organization I work for. I'm the Citizen Science Coordinator with the New Jersey Trail Conference, which is essentially the host organization for what is called the Lower Hudson PRISM. That is a big acronym for Partnership for Regional Invasive Species Management. There are 8 of these partnerships throughout New York State. And this is us here in the Lower Hudson. We are funded by the New York State DEC via the Environmental Protection Fund. And a lot of what we do as a PRISM is to do removals and control stuff. So we have a conservation corps that works with us, that works in lakes and aquatics, but also a terrestrial corps that basically goes out and does removal projects. They use chemicals and manual removals. And a lot of what I do is help with surveying and mapping of invasive species in the Lower Hudson PRISM region. So in the Lower Hudson PRISM area, as well as Northern New Jersey, since we're hosted by the Trail Conference. And, we have 52 partners. They're amazing organizations that come together and help us prioritize and coordinate the invasive species response in our area. Now, I'm a former high school teacher, and I'm an educator and love working with the public and kids. And so we do a lot of education and outreach. Our aquatics team is out at boat launches doing some information on, how to clean boats and how invasive species can spread from one lake or system to another. And then I also help with the survey training. So how to identify invasive species and then help map them. So my role at the Trail Conference is to really not only teach and educate about how to ID things, but it's really to inspire action. I am a runner. I am a guy who has always liked to just go straight to the summit when hiking. But what I've really learned in this position is to that love of learning and passion for learning about what's around you, that desire to explore and learn. So that desire to combine, to move, to be outdoors, as well as to learn about nature and how to protect areas. I help to coordinate the citizen science-driven invasive strike force. Ina had mentioned that you're going to have a volunteer group getting together. It's going to be very similar and modeled after what we do as a core crew, training surveyors to how to ID and then how to remove. And I train volunteers of all ages to help us track invasive species in our region. And these are some of the interns that worked with me last year. So I have an opportunity to work with people from a variety of different ages and different backgrounds. And certainly one of the biggest obstacles, and maybe many of you on the call can be I just look at a forest like this, and it just looks like everything is the same. There's no way I'm going to be able to do this. You may not have a guidebook, and also guidebooks are oftentimes, restrictive, right? Because it's just a temporary picture of something. But I promise you that with a little bit of practice and attention to detail and just honestly, just a desire to learn, you're going to get there. And I've seen so many people of different backgrounds get to that point where they can start to ID things and really make a difference. So the way that I think about it is if you look at a landscape like this, you may just see a bunch of green, right? But it's really no different than looking at a crowd of people. I mean, our eyes are trained to identify differences between people. It's really no different with plants. You just need to know what to look for, right? So that wall of green really gets broken down fairly quickly. And I'm gonna give you some tricks today as to these 5 species to be looking for and what are some of those key characteristics. So first, before we get into those 5 species, just some definitions. So you may have heard the terms non-native plants or non-native species and then versus invasive. Well, if you are an organism that is a non-native species, it just means that that organism has evolved in a different ecosystem and then was brought to a new area. So say from another country or even another region in North America to our local ecosystem here, by humans in some way. So there's various mechanisms. Sometimes it's in like the ballast of boats. Sometimes it's like by purposefully shipping them to a region. But to be non-native non-native species doesn't necessarily mean that it's harmful or not. It could be cultivated or uncultivated as well. But to become truly invasive, it means that not only is it a non-native species that was brought to a region, but in terms of ecological damage, it's significantly impacting and displacing the species that have evolved in this region. So in some way, it's harmful to the environment or human health in some way, but certainly from a stewardship perspective, ecological damage to displaced native species. And just as a bit of a background, I'm sure we're all familiar with this guy here. I mean, they're not as bad right now, but like a couple of months ago, I mean, I have these guys all over my property, all over my house, the dreaded stink bug, right? So this is an example of an invasive species that moved to an area that was accidentally brought to a new region. They actually came over in shipping crates to Pennsylvania in the late 90s and have caused all sorts of devastation to crops and things. So, they feed with little stylets on any kind of fruit and have caused like a lot of ecological and economic damage. But they were brought here as hitchhikers or by accident, just by hitchhiking on shipping crates. A lot of the species we're going to be talking about today, like barberry, as you see pictured here, oriental bittersweet, multiflora rose, these were actually introduced on purpose. So in the example of barberry, brought in the late 1800s and became like widespread as a popular hedge plant. But when they escape that cultivation or that area where they were planted by and I'll talk to you those mechanisms, they really have devastating effects on the ecosystem and our native habitat. So bittersweet, the same thing. You see them on roadways, people used to put them on pergolas and stuff because they have these pretty berries and grow as a nice vine. But when they escape cultivation, they cause a lot of issues in the landscape. So the question is, how do these species spread? I mean, you bring them to a property, you plant it, say, as a hedge plant. So, like with multiflora rose, for example, as fences and stuff, make good barriers. But how do they get out into more natural areas? Well, the berries that they produce, birds will sometimes eat them and then go to another region, poop them out, and they're all of a sudden, that plant that you see on your property is now having babies somewhere else in a natural area. They get attached, seeds can get attached to hikers' boots, natural dispersal with wind and water. And some of these like really invasive plants can grow from just like root segments. And those are really particularly dangerous. So just because you don't see the plant on your property spreading rapidly doesn't mean that it hasn't moved somewhere else. I just want to make that point very clear. And this is what happens when they escape. So this is bittersweet, which I know you guys have in your region, on a pergola. And then you get this. And I'm sure you guys have seen this, particularly next to the taconic, these vines just completely overtaking our native trees to the point where they're totally suffocated and strangled out. So, how invasive plants cause environmental harm? Well, certainly they take up space, resources, things like water, sunlight, nutrients they're getting from the soil. They outcompete and crowd out those native species that have evolved in this region for, some thousands, if not millions of years, So Japanese stiltgrass is one we're going to talk about today, a grass that can completely blanket these dense mats that you might see. Kudzu is actually a really highly invasive vine, very similar to oriental bittersweet or porcelain berry in our region. Think about a native plant trying to live under this mat, right? There's no way sunlight's getting through there. This is a monoculture. So the question is, well, the invasives are here, they are putting out oxygen into the environment. So why should, can't we just adapt to that and just call it a plant? Well, the bottom line is that natives, we know for certain, support more diverse wildlife. Most species of our native insects, which are extremely important to our ecosystems, including butterflies, are adapted and specialized usually to eat 3 or fewer species of native plants. Monarch butterflies, which are sort of this beacon of, this wonderful migration, something we all like to see, wonderful pollinators, right? And they are only adapted to eat native milkweeds. And we have, these other invasive vines coming in that mimic say, milkweed and trick the butterflies into laying their eggs on something that can't be a food resource for caterpillars. So not only are invasive vines taking up space of milkweeds, for example, but they're also tricking monarch butterflies into laying eggs in something they can't feed on. And, you know, it's not just about the plants. It would be one thing if it's just like, oh, one plant is displacing another. Well, our insects, those butterflies that we love, you know, insect species rely on those native plants for their food resource. And what we've seen in the last 3 decades, a 75% decrease in insect populations globally, including beetles, butterflies, moths, right? These are, you know, these plants, these native plants are food resource for these insects. And then, you know, the birds that we love to see in our bird feeders and out in our backyard, these native birds that rely upon these insects, you know, it influences them. And so the end result of these invasives coming in, you know, if you say, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the IUCN. That's essentially the International Union for Conservation of Nature. They put out a red list, which is basically like a comprehensive inventory of the status of biological species and biodiversity. Invasive species are the second biggest driver of species extinction in the world. It's particularly bad on islands. Here in the United States, where we don't have a lot of issues with like forest destruction and a lot of like harvesting like they do in like the rainforest, invasive species are the #1 driver or threats to biodiversity in the United States. So it is a major, major issue. Not only that, but it impacts, like, it's a huge economic impact, invasive species. In the United States, we spend $120 billion a year on invasive species problems. It's like all of Europe and Australia are dwarfed by how much we have to deal with this. It is a huge threat to biodiversity in the United States. This is like, so environmentally and economically. So the overall goal here, it's not just about the plants. Yes, we are talking about plants today, but it's really an ecosystem-based approach. You know, hemlocks that we are trying to protect are threatened by hemlock woolly adelgid, which is a type of invasive insect, right? Hemlocks provide good shade for trout. We know that bluebirds feed on many native insects that we like to see and preserve. You know, salamanders use native, you know, like leaf litter and and you know, fallen logs and stuff of native plants, and those like rely on our native plant species. So it's an ecosystem-based approach of what we're after. And what I want to reiterate to you guys is that don't be bogged down by the overwhelming nature of this. Like, I have seen the inspiration that can be inspired by community volunteers getting together and doing something about it and making a difference. And that's what I hope to convey to you guys, is that not only is it kind of fun to learn about what's around you and explore and like learn about plants and ecosystems in general. So it's not just about hiking and kind of walking, but it's about learning, right? But you can also make a difference to protect the natural areas that we all love, you know? So with that, I want to get to the 5 species that I know you have in the Roaring Brook community, and how to ID them, because the first step is really detection, right? You have to know what you're looking at so that you can actually do something about it. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. The first of which many of you guys may be familiar with. It is Japanese barberry, and it is widespread in our region. It's deciduous. It's a shrub. It has these thorns that can be identified very easily. The berries are also very distinctive, but I usually key in on the shape of the leaves. And I'm going to show you some videos in a second that it's like, you know, like baby spoons. I typically think of like barberry leaves as being little baby spoons that you'd feed a baby. And the arching branches is another distinctive feature. Imagine like a mad scientist's haircut, the big arching branches, right? That's how I like to look at it. So with that, I'm going to show you guys a field video of how to ID barberry in the field. So it's going to come across as a little tinny because it's coming through my screen, and depending on your connection, it might jump a little, but you'll get the basic gist of how to identify Japanese barberry. Let's take a look at these branches that I had mentioned before. So again, if you can see this almost flat, very thin, spoon-shaped leaves, that run along these branches, and you can start to see that there are little flower buds that are starting to appear. This video is being taken in mid-April, but so those flower buds are obviously not there anymore, but the leaf structure, the stems are all going to look the same. May, you'll start to see these almost whitish or yellowish flowers that start to come, and they tend to come out by these little leaf clusters here. Another thing that I wanted to point out is that usually by the end of the summertime, you'll start to see these berries, these red berries appear, and these are actually lasting from last year. So those red berries, you're going to start to see probably within the next month or so, like by fall time, you'll start to see these come out. They're oval shaped and they're red. Berries are more oval in shape and tend to be more elongated than some of the other ones that we'll see in terms of lookalikes. And if we can get a close look at what these thorns look like, you see how they go straight up and they almost look like toothpicks? And you can get an idea for scale of both of these things from my hand and fingernail next to it, right? But almost like these very, very thick, sharp ones that sharp thorns that appear at the end of the leaf clusters. So that just gives you a general look at that. The only other thing I wanted to point out is if you take a look at the base of this, zoom into the base of this, there are multiple stems that are arising on just this one plant. And again, because it's so dense in the middle, these harbor lots of ticks. So I got to be careful to check myself afterwards. And small mammals and rodents tend to use this as a cover, which again, provides hosts for some of these ticks. So these are some of the key features. And again, taking a look at the arching branches and that almost like wild look to it. And we'll take a look at some of the lookalikes in the area. But again, so I will go into the lookalikes in a second, but that's a really good look at Japanese barberry. So again, key ID features, you've got the baby spoon leaves. You're not going to see those flowers anymore, okay? But really look for those baby spoon leaves. These berries that are going to come out very soon, there's oval in shape that kind of dangle, and the toothpick look to those to the thorns that are coming out. So that's like really, really key. Now I want to contrast that with our second species, which is multiflora rose, which I also know that you have a lot of, because honestly, when I'm working in my own property and I'm trying to cut back some of these, I just know that I'm being ripped apart by thorns. And I'm like, what is it? I'm just being destroyed by thorns. It's probably barberry or multiflora rose. So how do you tell them apart? So multiflora rose has these really nice, rose petals, flowers. They're done blooming. So you're not going to see those for the rest of the year. But again, they form these like really, really dense clusters of shrubs. And I'm going to show you in this video here just how, there we go. I'm going to show you how to distinguish that from barberry. So multiflora rose, very, very similar and a lookalike, but there's easy ways to tell. And you're looking for the sharp thorns at the base, the spoon-shaped almost back. So that's lookalike alert. What we're looking at here is actually not Japanese barberry, but multiflora rose, which is another invasive species with sort of a wild growth pattern to it. So if you're out and about and you see this wildness of growth in those arching branches, it may be multiflora rose. So there's a couple of different things you can look for. Let's take a look at the berries that have persisted over the winter into the early spring here. You'll see that they are red, very similar to Japanese barberry, but they're not nearly as elongated and oval in shape. All right, so they're a little bit slightly rounded, and they have like the black tips at the end, as you can see here. So that's one of the features that can help distinguish it. Let's take a look at some other features about multiflora rose that are slightly different. If you take a look at the thorn, to me, that looks like the dorsal fin or of a shark or something. So it's more recurved, and you guys can clearly see that, right? And the other thing is that it almost looks like the thorns are like pasted on there, like someone took glue. You see how like the surrounding color of this is different than the actual thorn, like it was just glued on there. So dorsal fin look of a shark, and almost like it's glued on there. That's very, very different from barberry. And kind of a curve towards the back versus barberry, which has a very straight, almost toothpick shape to it. And if you can see behind that thorn, you see that there is almost what are called these fringed stipules at the base. So if you can see, if I can get that's a fancy plant word for basically like the area that connects where the leaves will connect to the main stem. That's what like a stipule is. There's some kind of like obvious feature or something, typically a stipule, so some sort of shape that is good for IDs. My finger in there. At the base of the leaf stalk, typically. See this little fringed, almost like these fringed stipules, or the base of the leaf stalk here that connect to this branch here. It's got those little like hairy projections on it, or what are called fringe. Certainly barberry doesn't have that, and this is the distinguishing feature of multiflora rose. So those are some of the features that you can look for to make sure that you're looking, in fact, at barberry and not multiflora rose. All right, I'm gonna zoom in more in the PowerPoint here as to what I really mean by that. So to me, it almost looks like a centipede or something, right? You know, like an insect's legs that are right at the base of that, where I'm circled here. And the reason why I point that out is that only multiflora rose and not any of the other, like Carolina rose or Virginia rose, I think it's Virginia rose too, they do not have that. Okay, so that's how you know it's multiflora rose. They do not have that little caterpillar looking thing down there. All right, and then again, over here, you're looking for, you know, the recurved dorsal fin shape of the thorns that are very, very different from barberry. And remember, barberry is more toothpick shape. Okay, so those were the shrubs. A shrub is essentially defined as having multiple stems, okay, versus a tree usually has one single trunk. Shrubs have multiple stems. So both of those, multiflora rose and barberry, have multiple stems. Now these are the vines. Vines cannot support their own weight. They have to climb over something. And I know you guys have seen Oriental bittersweet. You may not know it was that, but like bittersweet is everywhere. It is just notorious. And its main feature is that it climbs and corkscrews up trees. And I'm going to show you some videos on that in a second as it matures. You can see this twisting and this girdling of this tree. You can see it's just so insidious. It's like girdling and killing this tree, strangling it out. Its berries are going to be starting to appear very soon. I'm not going to be able to show that to you in the video. So it's like an orangish, reddish berry on it that's going to be coming out very soon. And then I'll show you some older and then some younger looks at bittersweet, because there's a couple of different things that you can do for managing it in a second. Oh, and that reminds me, you know, when I talk about going back to barberry and multiflora rose, you can do something about those two shrubs. Like, so barberry, the small plants, you can pull out or dig out. The bigger plants, you just want to kind of like cut them back. And you just got to stay on top of it for timing. So you basically want to get these things before the seeds start to develop. So now is actually, you know, a decent time to start doing these things before you start to see the berries coming out and the seeds coming out. So both multiflora and barberry, the timing is actually really good. And what else do I want to say? Multiflora rose, you do have to be more careful about getting the roots. And you don't just want to trim it back. You want to get the roots too. Barberry less so, just want to cut it down as much as you can close to the ground. That's really helpful. With a bittersweet, it's slightly different. We'll go over that in a second, but I want to show you the key ID features of Oriental bittersweet. It also has a carrot colored like roots. You may have seen that when you're pulling it out of your gardens, but here's how to identify bittersweet. Whoops. Get to that in a second. There it is. Rose. Coming in a second. Here's a good close-up look of the vines of Oriental bittersweet. And the reason you can tell is actually a couple of different ways. You see how it's wrapping around this tree in a corkscrew fashion? So it's twisting and wrapping around, almost like a python that's going up this. It's actually can even wrap around itself. You might even see these dark knobs with, again, a couple of different vines that are wrapping around itself. Also, the vast majority of vines you're going to see, native or invasive, don't corkscrew like this, besides wisteria, which is rarer. So like this is a key feature. You will notice that it has a lot of dots on it. Now, it depends on the age of that vine as to whether you'll see those, but those are lenticels and ways of oxygen exchange.
inside and outside of the vine. And that's another distinguishing feature of it. You got to look, it's almost like dotted with those. But again, that depends on the vine. You can see that all throughout here, but you're really looking for that corkscrew pattern. I did want to point out that right below it is poison ivy, and again, poison ivy with the 3 leaves. So there's poison ivy going just below it here, but that's all that twistiness right there. That is classic of Oriental bittersweet. We are filming this right now at the beginning of May, and you can just see, like, even the branches.
Even the growing season of bittersweet can vary. So you'll see these younger parts on it too, as well as the very mature corkscrew vines
that are coming out of
this is all still relevant
here. You can see that the leaves are starting to form. And again, so this is what the leaf structure will look like. You can see that there's little teeth at the edge of the leaf. So
when we describe teeth, it means little serrations on the outside part of the leaf. That is a key feature that you're looking at bittersweet.
That's another classic way to look at it. So, but as this continues to grow and the growing season comes on, you can see that those leaves are growing in clusters. These will open up a bit. And I'm just looking for almost like that oval shaped look to it. With a little, like the tip at the end. Whoops, if it comes back into focus. Yeah, you see this got like comes kind of to a point, but you're looking for the teeth on it. So the teeth on the edge, kind of growing out of this cluster here, but it's really that wrapping around like a big python that you're looking for. That distinguishes it from, say, poison ivy, which tends to meander, or even Virginia creeper that tends to meander as well. Look for that corkscrewing pattern.
So if you notice the pattern on poison ivy or Virginia creeper, which has 5 leaves, right? They just tend to go like up like a river, like kind of up a tree, versus bittersweet really will twist.
I also wanted to show you a younger version of bittersweet and what it looks like. You can see that the bark on this stem here is a little, it's like reddish brown, and you can see that the lenticels on this are more white, or those bumps that you're seeing for gas exchange are white. You can see the leaf clusters again, and if you zoom in very closely, you can see that there are 2 little tipped points on the leaves, okay? So when this starts growing out, you'll see that the leaves are arranged alternately as well. So they're not gonna be opposite of one another as this begins to grow out. The other feature of the younger branches that I wanted to point out, we'll go over here, it's a little more obvious. So bittersweet, again, as a vine, is looking for something to wrap around, right, in that corkscrew fashion. So what you'll often see are these things that are called leaders. So you see how this is almost like, it's like a snake kind of perched up, like a cobra looking for something. It's sort of like the snake-like appearance. These leaders will come off of the main, off of the main stem and be looking to wrap itself around something. You can see that this bittersweet here is wrapping around itself. So almost this corkscrew twisting around itself. You can see how it's all tangled. So this is what the younger version of bittersweet will look like. And
if you see those and they're going into the ground, you can yank those out. The bigger vines, you just want to cut down kind of like a little bit off the ground so you know and can see where you cut them, or just cut them out of the trees. With the younger ones, you can yank them out. So when you see those leaders, it's very nefarious, right? So look for something that is looking for purchase, like a coiled snake, okay? I wanted to show you also the difference between that and, say, like a grapevine, and what some of the more mature leaves would look like. So I'm going to play that part of the video for you right here.
In here that you may confuse it with. So again, if we're looking for the kind of the rougher bark here, looking for lenticels, this is mostly bittersweet that you're seeing here. But if you come over here, you'll see that the bittersweet is actually wrapping itself around something that looks slightly different. So you see this shaggier bark here. I can actually, so shaggy that I can peel it off. Well, this is what a grapevine looks like. They almost, you'll see them in a lot of the forests around here. They almost look like Tarzan swinging types. But this is what the native grapevines look like. You can pull off the bark. It's very stringy, okay? So this is bittersweet. Again, you can tell by the corkscrewing that it's doing around this grapevine here. Here's another grapevine. A slightly smaller version to it, but bittersweet is wrapping itself around this grapevine. A lot of what we're seeing in this picture is actually bittersweet. And again, I can tell by these leaves and see these leaf buds here that are coming off. This is just really early growth form in May. But you might confuse it with grapevines. But the way to tell is that sort of stringy bark on grapevines versus this bittersweet, which is a little bit rougher. That tangled mess of vines that I showed you in the beginning of May, this is the same exact area now at the end of May. I just wanted to show you what has happened to this. Again, you've got bittersweets along with those grapevines that I showed you before. But this is what the bittersweet leaves will actually start to look like. They're much
I just wanted to show you this part of the video because it still has the teeth on it. It just is like the leaves are bigger, okay, and a little more oval shape. So I at least wanted to show you that part of the video because the younger ones are a little bit more like have a point at the end. I'll show you in a second here. But it's really like the corkscrewing that's going to be the clear ID for you and how to manage it. But again, the younger ones can be a little bit pointier. You're looking for, also it's like, is it seeking purchase on something? And then the bigger ones can be a little bit more like circular in shape, but it always has the teeth on the outside. All right, final two coming up here. Garlic mustard. This is an herbaceous plant. I'm sure you have this on your properties. Like it is very pervasive and you can actually cook, you can pull it and cook it. So it does smell and taste like garlic. But what's interesting about garlic mustard, it is what is called a biennial, meaning it has a 2-year sort of pattern of growth to it. This is what it looks like in its first year, and I'll show you a video of it in a second. These are called rosettes, and it's almost like a horseshoe shape to it. And then it starts to do what is called bolting upright, and then it kind of just grows straight up. So this like more rosette look to it takes on a more triangular look to the leaves in its second year of growth. And so the best thing that I can like really do to show you is like, again, the first year of growth, rosettes, very low to the ground, bolting upright, more triangular look to it. And then right now in the fall, if it's second year of growth, the leaves will have probably fallen out and you'll just see these like, this is where the seeds are held, okay? These are called saliques. And the best way to do it is to show you a video of what it looks like in the field and distinguish like how the variations versus me showing you this PowerPoint slide. So let's go back to the video and show you how to ID it in the field here.
Like bigger, deeper, you can clearly see
just give me a second to
the end.
Go ahead.
Here is a whole field of garlic mustard. And you can tell it, again, that remember that garlic mustard, as I said in the PowerPoint, is a biennial plant.
I imagine this looks familiar to you guys. Even if you didn't know it was garlic mustard, you're not going to see the white flowers anymore of the second year of growth. It's probably done with the flowering part. But you'll start to see how different the first year and second year of growth of garlic mustard is. This is the second year.
And so it has 2 distinct years that look completely different from one another. So I'm filming this towards the end of May, and you can see the second year of garlic mustard. It grows almost straight up in the air. The leaves on it are actually pretty triangular, and you can tell that is garlic mustard just by crunching it up in your hand, smelling it. Yep, smells like garlic, and you can see that the white flowers are pretty prevalent on it right now. What these are here these are called saliques. This kind of like stalk-like appearance to it, and they contain the seeds, and they actually have ballistic propulsion and will shoot the seeds out. Eventually, once very soon, this will actually die off, and then it'll just sort of like leave behind the stalks of this. They'll turn.
So this is what you might see right now are the stalks. Like they will start to turn brown, but the stalks will persist, like almost like a brownish look to it of these saliques and things.
And sort of a brownish color, and then you won't be able to recognize it towards the end of the summer, early fall. But right now is a great time to view and see garlic mustard, and you can see it's just totally taken over the ground cover here. I also wanted to point out what its first year of growth looks like. This is the rosette stage. So in its first year of growth, it's much lower to the ground. You know, this is a couple of inches off the ground here. And this is like a huge rosette, but you can see that it's more like U-shaped or like almost like horseshoe shaped. That sort of sense of smell of garlic is even stronger on this now if you crush this up. But you're really looking for that like U-shaped to its first year of growth. Sometimes they'll be really big like this, but you can see like right next to it, some of the other rosettes are much, much smaller. So just a couple of different things to be on the lookout for when you're thinking about garlic mustard and looking for it. So first year and then a second year of growth looks actually really different. Second year, much more triangular leaves. In the first year of growth, it's really like more of like U-shaped, horseshoe shaped, or many people say like kidney shaped look to it. So just a couple of.
All right, so that's garlic mustard. And the good thing about garlic mustard is it's so easy to pull. Like it just, if you get down by close to the roots, you just pull it right out. And it's a great thing to help to use, to manage, easily pulled by hand. And again, the timing is important. If you stay on top of this and you bag and remove, or you pull it and then put it kind of on top of rocks where it can't seed out, and it can dry out, it's actually, you can have really good impact on clearing out an area in terms of management. So that's just something to think about. All right, and then our fifth species, you may have noticed it in that video if you're paying close attention. It was right next to that garlic mustard in that video, so I'm going to show you in a second, is Japanese stiltgrass. Now, Japanese stiltgrass is a light green grass, and especially now as it's grown up, not in the video I'm going to show you in a second because I was taken like a little while ago, the way you can tell is that Japanese stiltgrass versus other grasses has a white stripe, like a racing stripe down the shiny stripe down the leaf axis. It's very weak stemmed. And another great thing that you can help control by pulling it out, it just comes out like you barely need to pluck it and it'll come out. A lot of the native grasses don't come out so easily. Like it's harder to pull it out, but this is just whoop, and it's out. Okay, so you can definitely make a big dent in terms of removal. And this just forms these dense lawns and patches in forest systems. So the last video I want to show you today, and I'll leave you with this, is how to look at its variations in the field.
Well, things to be on the lookout for garlic mustard when you're out and about. In this same field of garlic mustard, you're also going, I don't know if you saw another invasive species here, but this is Japanese stiltgrass, and it's all over this area in which I'm out in the forest right here. And again, right now, Japanese stiltgrass is just starting to grow. It's got kind of a lime green appearance to it, and actually won't have that distinctive silver stripe on it, but just to put my thumb down there for reference, just to show you. But this is all stiltgrass, lime green appearance. You can see that the main blade of grass, you know, it's really easy to pull out. That's what the roots are going to look like. And you can
what it looks like now is just taller, but it has the same exact structure of this, and it has that distinctive silvery stripe.
See that there's like the main blades are kind of coming off alternately on the primary part of the grass, and almost like look like left right kind like of this. Those blades of grass coming out, really easy to pull out, unlike some of the other grasses, but very, very prevalent. You can see it's just all around here, and on forests around you, if you're seeing a lot of this like matted dense grass that especially at this time of year is low to the ground, it's most likely going to be stiltgrass. And I would recommend, till you get the hang of like recognizing what it is, use Seek on it. Seek does a really nice job of recognizing.
And I'm going to introduce you to that Seek app in a second here, and I know we're getting close to time, but yeah, so stiltgrass versus the native grasses. If you see grasses that are kind of clumped together in clumps, it's not stiltgrass. If you find stiltgrass, it's going to be a dense mat, and it's going to be like a lot of coverage versus like a patch here, and then a patch here, and then a patch here. So that is another good distinguishing characteristic. And so that is it for the main 5 species that I know you guys have on your property. But if this was overwhelming and you're just like, I can't remember this, first of all, you can always review what we've learned here today. And I'm here as a resource, and Ina knows her stuff, and I'm sure many other people on the call as well can help you out. But I must say that this app is amazing. And I know that you may be reluctant to use it, but I promise you that if you can take a picture and hold up your phone and you take a picture of your kids or grandkids, you will be able to use this app. It is so user-friendly. It's amazing. It basically works like a live image recognition, like a live barcode scanner. You go to a grocery store, you scan your groceries. This is how it works. You get the Seek app. You can hold up your phone literally to what you are looking at, and in real time, be able to see what it is you're looking at. And I guarantee the 5 species that we talked about today, the Seek app is phenomenal at IDing those. So it is just so much fun to use. It's a live image recognition software. It takes a lot of the guesswork out, especially as you're beginners and learning about what's around you. And it's really fun like to use and learn about what you're doing. And I know I'm a little over time, but I think it's worth, I know that some of you have seen it, but I at least want to show you the tutorial on it, just to show you how easy it is to use this. And what an amazing tool this can be for you guys in building your confidence about what you're seeing. It's just a 1-minute video, and it has like been immensely helpful to so many of our new beginner volunteers. And it is it's a live image version of a larger citizen science app called iNaturalist, which is also great. But I'm going to at least introduce you to Seek today and how it works. So if you're, make sure that you can see what would be your right side of your screen. If you can see, this guy is holding up the phone to this flower here. And here it is going to say what the genus or species is. And he is not taking a picture. He's literally just holding his phone up to it, and in real time is going to ID that plant that is in front of him. And that is a blue blossom. Right? So it's something that he may not have never ever seen before. And in real time, he knows just by changing angle of his phone what it is that he's seeing. A dwarf checker mallow. Now, if you don't have to take a photo, but if you do want to take a photo, the app will actually go into whether it's native or invasive. You can learn about what it is that you saw, kind of a little bit of its ecology, and we'll link you to a Wikipedia page on it. It'll show you its range map, what its taxonomy. And it's also really fun for kids. If you have kids or grandkids to use this, you can play little games with it. You can earn badges. You can take on different challenges and play it like almost like a video game as well. So I just wanted to show you as a really, really like phenomenal resource what that is, and how it works. So with that, I will kind of turn it over to questions, and I'm happy to take any questions in the chat. But Seek is a great tool in addition to using experts, field guides, and things like that. And I just want, getting involved in this type of work is not only so critical to help protect native systems, but honestly, guys, it can be very fun and educational. And people that I work with often, will write to me saying, "Thank you so much. It has really, really changed the perspective of my hikes. Like, I'm looking at the details now, and I've learned so much about what's around me, and I'm really able to more act and be excited about what I'm seeing and feeling like I can do something about it." So with that, I'll take some questions.
Okay. Wow, Brent, that was just fantastic. Thank you so much. It's really just an outstanding talk. And I'm going to say that the majority of our community is private property. So if the 32 people who are here and listen to this talk can help teach another 32 people, and we can each do this on our private property, even without the public working, we will have made an enormous difference. So, John, you want to?
Yeah, sure. Hi. Well, the first question is sort of a multiple question for you, Brent. It's from Jonathan, and he's trying to get rid of goutweed, but he has a bunch of other things, some of which are invasives, just from reading it. Vinca, winter creeper, pachysandra, and something that looks like world milkweed. So what's the easiest way to get rid of these in general? And then he also has a question about trumpet flower, which I also have, the trumpet flower vine, which is native and seems pretty well behaved in my case. But the question that Jonathan has is, should he pull that vine? And I kind of have the same question myself, although I did see my hummingbirds at it.
Yeah. Okay. So I do want to be clear about one thing here, is that there are multiple people involved in my organization that are the removal and management experts. I'm more of an educator, ID kind of guy. So I'm hesitant to give you like very specific advice that I'm not like 100% confident in. So I'll only say the things that I'm sure of. I would say in general, in terms of management and removal, timing of that is absolutely critical. And so the main thing that you should be thinking about when doing any of this work is, has it gone to seed yet? So by pulling it out, like honestly, by doing and cutting things back and pulling it out right before it goes to seed is generally the best time, because that plant has put all of its resources into making seeds to get ready for the next generation. So it's spent a lot of time and energy to get to that point. And so by pulling it out like right before it like starts to really produce the seed, it's like gearing up for it is great time. So before the berries come out on barberry, before and multiflora rose is really the time to tackle it and pull it back. With the vines in general, if you've got a vine, you generally want to, like, if it's going down into the ground and you can see the vine and get it at its source, it would be great to pull it out by the roots, but that's not always possible. So you want, with vines, you don't want to, the problem with cutting it all the way down to the ground is that you don't know exactly where, it's hard to see where it is that you cut. So generally you want to cut it in multiple areas so you know, like, this has been cut down. And then, so you can see like what you've done in previous years and things like that. Or if with the younger ones, by just pulling it out by the roots, that's really the way to go and stay on top of it. So I can't give you specific advice on goutweed and those sorts of things, but I can give you general advice as things to be thinking about. But certainly I can take these questions to my supervisors and people who are like really, really educated about this and give you a much more specific answer on that.
Okay, great. A few of the folks have similar questions, and so I guess that will apply to them. Roberta has an add-on, which is, how do we dispose of cuttings?
Yep. Okay, so if there are seeds, if you're doing it at a time in which that seeds could be there, you pretty much have to bag it and take it away. But if that is not a possibility, the next best step is to pick a very dry, open area that can be put in the sun, like a big rock. And that's what we do, because sometimes we gotta, like, our crew has to go hike in miles into an area in which they're working, right? And just pulling out multiple bags is just not feasible. So they find an open area with a big rock that can be exposed to the sun, and you put them all, you pile them all up there and dry it out so that the seeds will no longer be viable and it can't possibly like grow up from there. So that's the best way to do it. In terms of bittersweet, again, the young leaders you can pull. The big ones, just cut low to the ground, but enough to see like where you have cut. Any that you can reach, within reach, you can also cut. So cutting at multiple parts of the vine will certainly help save the trees. And you gotta stay on top of it. But eventually you'll get down to the part where it's just on the ground, hopefully. But you don't want to go. I would not recommend like getting up into trees to take down large vines of bittersweet. It can be very dangerous and can actually harm the tree to do that.
Okay. There's a question from Mike Mikulski about grapevines, which you mentioned in the video. I have them as well, and I'm not sure if they're invasive or not. And what would your position be on that?
So this is a tricky one, because the grapevines with the peely bark that I showed before, they are native, but they can be. So I, as an official employee of the Lower Hudson Prison, cannot go out and tell you to go and remove them. I'm not allowed to do that because it's a native species that we're trying to protect. But I also know that things like that, poison ivy is also native, right? They are what we would term nuisance species, right? That they can overtake an area. And I think, honestly, by rule of thumb, what is our mission here is to protect biodiversity. So if by removing that, if it is completely taking over and is a monoculture, right, and not allowing other species to come and inhabit that area that could otherwise be inhabiting that are native, you have to make a decision, a management decision that is best for that specific area. So that's the most I can say on that.
Okay, thanks.
But they are native.
Thank you. Michael has a question. If stiltgrass has taken over an area too big to hand weed, what can one do? Unknowingly mowed over it in the past, which was not wise, he assumes. So what is your recommendation for large patches where it's become a monoculture?
I mean, I've talked to, again, I don't want to overstep my bounds in terms of my knowledge, but I have talked to colleagues about this before. It's really difficult, and it depends. It's like a lot of what I've learned about stiltgrass is very anecdotal. I've known successful treatments that have smothered it out so that it can't grow and put mats over it, but that's not always feasible. Pulling is definitely like effective, but it's also time consuming. And again, you can continually, as long as the timing of it is done appropriately, like pulling it before it goes to seed is the best way to go. I can't recommend this without like experts involved, but certainly chemical treatment. And then I've heard people like burning it, like with torches. But you got to be very careful. Like, I mean, I wouldn't recommend that for a layman's person to do that. I'm just talking about how land managers have dealt with it. But it's notoriously difficult to get rid of. But I've also seen, community volunteer events that have successfully dealt with it in certain areas. But it's very, very difficult to deal with.
This is sort of a follow on. So this is from Lynn. If you were to treat a large area, what's the best way to deal with soil disturbance and bare ground once invasives have been removed?
Yeah, that's a great question. Certainly you can help plants in certain areas if you have seed of native plants. So visiting a native plant center and getting advice from them as to what to put in those areas. Oftentimes, if it's you can't do that in park systems in which we don't own the land, but if on your own properties, you can certainly visit a native plant area to come back. But generally, if you get rid of the invasives and you have at least some semblance of natives in the area, they will naturally repopulate. It's just that they got so smothered out and just didn't have a leg to stand on. But I've seen, I've seen native populations rebound very quickly once they're actually removed, as long as they are in the general vicinity. Otherwise, you'll have to visit, native plant center to start getting seeds and stuff to be put back.
Well, I'll have a follow-on question. I noticed vinca and English ivy around a lot, which I think are also non-native. I don't know if they're considered invasives, and where a lot of things go away, English ivy tends to come in real quick. So I didn't know if you felt that was a good thing to let it go in there, or to eradicate that as well.
The vincas, yeah. The thing is that we're not seeing vinca come up in like more remote natural areas very often. It's usually like spread from an estate or property and it's starting to creep in, but it's limited in its growth. So it's not what is called like a like highly invasive, right? So there's moderate levels of invasiveness. It's on the lower end. It can take over an area, but it doesn't have great mechanisms for jumping from one place to the next. And so like, but yes, I mean, certainly in and around states and properties, yeah, it can be vast monocultures, and I would definitely recommend doing something about it.
Okay. Kate Cunningham has a question from the internet, which is, news has featured unrequested seed packets arriving in the mail.
Yeah, that was
does anyone know what they are and whether any have been received in our area, and can you make food out of them, or should you plant them, or well, I don't know what to.
Do not plant them. That is like a big racket. I don't know if they've gotten to the bottom of it. I saw that the article she's referencing I read, but I haven't gotten an update on that as to what's going on. But certainly, like, do not plant those, and like just dispose of them as soon as possible.
Yeah, or turn them to the CIA maybe. Lynn Bernstein has a favorite question for me. I'm a lifelong hater of Pachysandra. It's not a question. Lynn makes a statement. We have Pachysandra invading our wetlands. So
very similar to yeah. I mean, yeah, it's just same issue where it's not considered high level risk in terms of it taking over ecosystems, because it just doesn't have a great mechanism for getting into like more remote natural areas and taking over forests, but like near and around like properties or places where it was planted originally, it can really take over.
Yeah, it's tough too. Having removed it, it's tough. Okay, well, I don't see any further questions. Thanks so much, Brent.
Yes, Brent, this was just terrific. And I will make sure that everybody gets your contact information for New York, New Jersey Trail Conference, not your personal contact information. And, you know, everybody should know that this was an incredible experience. We got a tremendous overview, but each of these areas that Brent talked to us about has its own lecture. And, you know, the people who were here with his previous one know that Look and that Seek and Invasive, yeah, have a whole lecture, and there are other ones. So there's lots more learning to do, but there's also lots of work to do. And just thank you so much, Brent.
Yeah, and I will say, if you have more management related questions or whatever, certainly shoot me an email, because I have, you know, I have the resources and stuff to get the answers to you. I may not know them in my own head, but you know, that's what we're here for, is to answer those types of questions. So I will put you in touch with the right people.
Great. Well, I'm sorry to run this as such a long meeting, but we're going to say goodbye to Brent, and thank you so much. This was really terrific. Thanks to everybody who came. But he's going to leave us probably now. Although
okay. We'll see you later, guys. Thanks again.
And we're going to move on to talk about some district issues. Most of all, I want to tell everybody that there is a budget that is done every year for the district, and that preliminary budget meeting is coming up in 1 week. That is open to the public, and I will put on the internet exactly where it is. It's actually going to be in person in the town park, and encourage you to come to that. But it's important that the 33 of us, I think, who are here right now, or as many as who can stay, can talk a little bit about these budget issues and about what kinds of things we want, because the budget is actually one of our primary ways of getting wants and needs translated into actions through the town. And it's very important to be involved in that process, so it doesn't just run away from the community. I'm going to talk to you a tiny bit before we talk about the literal actual budget, about what this district budget is. You've probably seen a small, it's not tiny, but a number on your tax bills that is listed as district budgets. And overall, I think it comes to maybe 1.5%. I'd have to check exactly, of the taxes that you pay. So it's not a tiny number, but it's not a huge number. And one way to think about it is that because it's then magnified by all of the people who are in the community, it actually allows us to get a lot of bang for our buck out of that tax money if we spend it on things that are important to us. The budget usually comes to about $200,000, and that's for the district of Roaring Brook Lake. Some of it is not discretionary, so we can't choose how we want to spend it, but others we can decide on how we want to spend it. And so how we spend it makes a difference in the community and in the things that are important to us. I'm going to actually share my screen now and put a budget up. While I'm getting that going, I am going to say a couple of things, one of which is that I did have a request to ask people to please not walk their dogs on the beaches. We could really lose our ability to, there we go. We could lose our beaches. These are public health, Department of Health requirements, and if we are not careful about it, we could actually lose our beaches. Can people see my screen? Yes, no, yes, okay. Should I make it full screen? Is that better or worse? Okay. Okay, so this is last year's. We don't have this year's yet, and I'm just going to show it to you to give you an idea of what the categories are and what we do. So the non-discretionary things you'll see in the first section, and they're things that we pay a small percentage of things for the administration of the district. Judy Travis is the district clerk, and we help to pay the expenses for her work, and we pay the expenses for running town hall, and down at the bottom are also some expenses that are Social Security, Medicare, state retirement, and then medical insurance, and when we have a bond, we have bond payments on that. So those are not discretionary. We can't really make any decision making about that. And usually the first thing following that, which is the dam issues, the dam engineering and repair, and the dam fencing for the CARP, which is required by the EPA. Those are not considered discretionary either. If we don't take good care of our dam, we are really nothing. I mean, that would be the worst possible thing that could happen to us. So I'm listing it as non-discretionary. But then, you know, comes things like the lifeguards. I mean, you know, I think the lifeguards add a lot. They add employment for young people in the community. It's a good, responsible job, and we're just happy to have them involved in that way. It helps to do some of the policing and helping to keep people who might not be part of our community off of the beaches. And it allows kids to have a level of independence that they wouldn't have. You know, this is the kind of community where a 10-year-old could, depending on what their parents thought, get on a bicycle and go to the beach, and there's a lifeguard there to watch them. That's just tremendous. So that's indiscretionary, but I don't think anybody realistically wants to change anything to that. We also have a lake superintendent, and that's a very reasonable amount of money, and that is important to keep. You know, those are young people, and they need somebody who is a supervisor, and there's a lot of work that Natalia does, as you know. And then there's a custodian of the dam, that's Sam Lee, and he's doing a fabulous job of just, you know, really keeping an eye on what needs to be done with the dam, of opening the valve, closing the valve, making sure that if we have a hurricane coming, that we have some reserve for the dam. And then come a bunch of things that we really would consider more discretionary, and I am just going to highlight a few of them to really talk about today, and I'm going to run through the others pretty quickly. So beach equipment is just swim lines, lifeguard umbrellas, beach improvements is boat racks, tables, things like that. These are different from year to year. This one, cove maintenance and silt removal, is a very interesting line. We have been accumulating some money that could be used if we need to dredge in the lake, if we need to do something that's really expensive, a big project. And so we've been putting, you know, an amount of about $4,000 a year into it, but not spending it. And if we're tight for budget, we can decide not to do that. But in general, that's been a good policy in terms of making that that bumper and that kind of plan for the future. Beach sand, we've been putting for the last few years. We've put 0, 0, 0. We have bought small amounts of sand, and we will see what we can do about that. Beach supplies are, and we could talk about sand if you like. Trash bags, first aid kits, etc. Those are just normal. Now, beach tags and parking stickers is a big area that I want to talk about. So let me just run through the bottom of these. The lake monitoring is about $500 for the citizen monitoring project. The volunteer monitoring project covers the cost of doing the laboratory measurements and analyzing it, and the rest of that is for our terrific lake manager AJ Reyes, and we budgeted about $25,000 for that last year, and I personally would like to continue doing that, but that certainly is something that we can discuss. I think the health of the lake is critical. We've had 2 years in a row with really good lake quality water, and I think everybody can see the difference that that makes in quality of life and ultimately in property values. So it's really important. Beach preservation, I'm sorry to tell you that I believe that this is where we reclaim sand for Children's Beach, but I'm not 100% sure. So I think that's what that is. Beach maintenance is just the lawn mowing and spring cleanup, and you know, we could add to that, we could subtract from that. So that's something that could be up for discussion, and other things can be put into there. Wildlife control is just $300, but that's the goose control. And I think a lot of people noticed this year we oiled 31 eggs from 7 nests, and we had 0 goslings. Now, we still had adult geese, but they weren't as aggressive as the adult geese with babies, and they didn't stay for as long. And so I think that we just have to continue this in an aggressive way. It's a minimal thing. Fish stocking, we are doing a fish study at the end of this summer. AJ Reyes is going to do that, and we will learn a lot about whether this money that's invested in fish stocking is actually improving the our fisheries. So if it's not helping, then we're not going to continue to spend it. This is an important line. I want you to know that even though there's $200,000 here, there is a major portion, and right now it's about $97,000 that is being spent on trash removal, and that this has gone up astronomically. Just as recently as 2016, this was a quarter of the district budget. Now it's half of the district budget. So we don't, you know, this is negotiated as best we can. This is a huge problem all over the country because there is just no place to put trash anymore, and there's no market for recyclables anymore. So really, one of the things that we can do is to really be as meticulous as we all can about purchasing foods that have less plastic associated with them, packing materials, recycling and composting as much as we can on our own. And while those things won't affect our budget per se, the less trash we have, the faster they can pick it up, and maybe they can bid better. I don't know. So just a piece where you can think about how much money we're spending. 50% of this. Everything else is dwarfed by it. Now, the big thing I wanted to have here as a really open discussion, and we can use the chat room as we were doing before, but if people want to speak here, they can too, is that we have had more of a problem this year than we did previously with people who are non-residents using both the beaches and the boat launches. And that has been an issue for us. And I would like to say that some things have come up for discussion. And last night, the Roaring Brook Lake board, the POA board, sat and talked quite at length about this issue. And what we felt was that having a security guard, which is an expensive item, is something that we can postpone a little bit while we see whether this was an anomaly for this year or whether this is something that's going to be an ongoing, continuing process, because that's going to be a huge expense for us. But in the meantime, we see very little harm in doing two relatively inexpensive things. One is to have parking tags, is what we talked about last night, where a tag can be hung from the windshield identifying the car as a resident car. And then beach tags, which people can bring to the beach with them, put on their beach bag, and identify them as a resident. And those things are inexpensive, and we don't need to, you know, relatively inexpensive, but we do need to budget for them. And the third thing would be to budget for more boat stickers. It's been, I think, 12 years since we changed the color of our boat sticker. And one of the ways to help sort out derelict boats and boats that aren't being used is to re-sticker everything with a new color or a new boat sticker every period of years. And it has been 12 years since we did that. So we want to probably budget for that. And then finally, we'd like to budget for more signage at the beaches so that it's very explicit that people need to have beach tags to come on the beach, and maybe that will discourage people, and parking and so on. And we are hoping to redo some of our district-specific town code this year. And if we're able to do that, then we will want to be putting up new signage as well. So we'd like to put in a bit of money into this category this year that will be sort of new money, if people are in agreement with that. And somehow I missed here, there is a line item for invasive, here it is, invasive plant removal, which has been on the budget for several years now and was originally $500, has now gone up to $3,000. And I think this is also critical. I think everybody should be working as hard as they can on their own properties and volunteering to work on the district properties, but we still are going to need to have some management that is paid management in the budget. So sorry to race through that. I hope that wasn't too overwhelming, but now I really would love to hear from everybody. And I'm going to, shall I leave the share up or shall I take the share down? What would you like? Give me thumbs up to.
Why don't you leave it up, and you know, we can
Okay.
still see people talking on the.
Yeah, I will do that. Okay, so you can either unmute your microphone if you have a thought or something that you'd like to mention. I'd really like to hear what people think about having beach tags and car tags so that we make sure that the board is speaking for everybody who's here.
Ina?
Yeah.
Everyone. Good morning, everyone.
Hi.
As you know from last night, I feel like beach tags are a great idea, but I also think we should hire at least one tag monitor, which is not a security guard, but a monitor to monitor the beaches, such as Lake Oscawana has.
Yeah, Oscawana has somebody that goes around. They actually sit on each individual beach, but we wouldn't need that. We could get one monitor for less than the cost of a lifeguard to go around and check all the beaches, at least in the beginning of the season when this is all happening. I mean, you know, we had an incident here where there was a big giant shouting match with screaming and cursing, trying to get somebody off the beach by the beach superintendent who was, you know, was there. And if it wasn't for a couple of the men who live in the neighborhood, this guy, he was shouting curses and screaming at her in front of her children and other people's children. It was a bad scene. It was a bad scene. We absolutely need to have somebody dedicated to going around checking these beaches. Can't have it. We had somebody else stealing a whole cooler full of fish. He loaded up all undersized fish in a cooler, picked them up and left with them.
Drew, do you think it should be a volunteer or should it be a paid person?
No, who's going to volunteer for that? Will you? I won't. No, you got to pay. You got to pay somebody. You got to give somebody, you know, $12 an hour to go around and do it. It's you know, lifeguard's about 12, 13 an hour. I think one of these people you could probably get somebody to do it for 10.
Would you think that we could do it by increasing Natalia's salary? Because she's there anyway and going around anyway.
She is. I mean, if you add that as part of, I mean, her job is when it's found, her job is to deal with it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is she's not paid. I don't know what she gets. $2,500 per.
No, 4,000.
4,000. No, I mean.
Still, yeah.
No, go ahead.
I'm just thinking of having one person rather than adding another person, but I'm open to hearing what other people think. Do other people think we should hire another person to be helpful with checking the, well, first of all, do people agree with beach tags?
I mean, I certainly do. I think it's a good start. I don't know what's going to happen when the monitor comes over to someone and says you don't have a beach tag.
You gotta need a beach tag just to identify who's who.
That's fine.
Yeah, you know, and you don't see a beach tag and somebody asks them, who are they? You
need to start somewhere.
Ina, do you want to do a poll? I can put up a poll and see what.
Terrific. That would be great. That'd be great. So why don't the first poll be, do you think beach tags are a good idea? And then the second is, do you think we should add another person to monitor beach tags?
Okay,
So Ina, would monitoring be just on the weekends?
Well, you know, I don't know. I mean, my personal bias would be to see how it works just to have the beach tags. I mean, I think that if we have signage that says you have to have a beach tag, if everybody who's on the beach has a beach tag, maybe it'll make people feel more uncomfortable about coming without a beach tag. I also think that it may be no easier for the person hired to do this to effectively deal with it than it is for Natalia. And I don't think we're ready to spend $40 an hour for a security guard.
No.
Ina, it's also
I
not
was saying 10 or 12. I'm saying 10 or 12 for an individual to go around
Tag checker.
and check tags, like they have over in Oscawana, for that matter.
Well, Oscawana actually has a different system. I mean, I don't know exactly, but generally their beaches are local to the people who live in that area. There are not as many people on that beach, and they know each other. So I'm not aware of them having somebody who goes around.
What is Lake?
They 100% do. I know her personally.
Yeah, I actually know the tag checker over there. You know, the problem with it is like I said, that there's literally been screaming matches. These people know that they don't
Yes,
belong there.
but wouldn't there be screaming matches with that same person the same way there
Well,
were?
no, after that one, he's gone. The idea is to find him. The people are afraid. You know, some people are afraid to confront them. Some people don't know. They think it's not their job. I saw some people come onto the beach the other day, and I wasn't sure. It was after hours. What?
Yeah.
It was after hours. I wasn't sure to confront them or not. You know, but a beach checker, it's their job. You say, hey, you know, sorry to bother you if you are a resident, but you know, I'm here to check the tags. And if they say they're not, then, you know, show me your license. Don't run. You don't have to run home. Just show me your license that has Roaring Brook address, whatever. You know, something like that. But it's not even that they need to get confrontational. But at least if you know it's there. Let me tell you, Natalia wouldn't have been able to get rid of this guy on Park Beach if it wasn't for Mark Borgi and Jason Platt. This guy would not have gone anywhere. It almost turned into a fist fight. It was bad.
Wow.
So yeah, these people come down and they're very brazen. They're emboldened. He started trying to turn it into a racial thing. It was no. Get out.
Drew, did he come by car?
Came by car, as far as I know. And they try to lie about a name of somebody who was, I'm friends with so-and-so. Nobody ever heard the name.
That's why car tags really are your first line of defense. If you see cars parked at the beaches that don't have car tags, you know, some identifying unique identifier that they belong here, then that's a tip-off that there are people using the beach. And you don't have to have a confrontation. You can leave a sticker on their car that says you're parked illegally without appropriate identification.
Yeah,
We're not allowed to put stickers on people's cars. That's against the law for us.
What about, you can't put something under the windshield wiper or something like that?
We're going to try. I'm going to table this on the cars, but we are going to try to work on the.
I know, why are you tabling the question of car tags?
Well, we are going to have car tags, and we are going to see if we can improve the district code so that the district code actually allows us to ticket people. Even though the signs say that it's resident-only parking, at the moment, that is not part of our code, and so you can't really do anything about somebody who's parking.
Well, I think car tags are the first line of defense, and they can accomplish a great deal without personal confrontation.
Right, I agree. I totally agree. I think we should have beach tags and car tags.
Well, car tags are the first line of defense because they have to be driving in.
Of course.
Right.
There is a poll up there. We have 100% of people who voted so far, 15 out of 25, who think beach tags are a good idea. If you didn't vote at the poll, it's marked poll. Thank you, Mike. This is great.
Oops.
I know. I just wanted to volunteer the idea. I may have put this in the chat, but that having something set that we can hand to people. It's short of a ticket, but it's an explanation of policy.
Yes.
Obviously, it's not going to totally avoid the possibility of confrontation, but just like, this is a blanket policy. This applies to everybody. We can leave it in the windshield and just make things clearer that aren't clear now. That's an easy and inexpensive thing to do, and I'd volunteer to help do that.
That's great, Michael. Yeah, I think
just so you know, that there's no question in their minds that they're not supposed to be there. This isn't somebody wandering in off the street accidentally hitting a beach that they think that they're allowed to be at. So, I mean,
Sure.
there's nothing wrong with handing them a piece of paper, but you know what they're going to do? They're going to throw it over their shoulder, and those papers are going to be floating in our lake. To be perfectly honest with you, there is no question in their minds that they are not supposed to be there, and they're coming in. And the problem with it is that some of them are being belligerent.
Same people.
Well,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Hey, hi, it's Jonathan. I just want to add that it's also like just the beaches, but there's a lot of people coming out to the boat launches who I don't know if they belong there, especially the one right by me, Roaring Brook Lane, is very hidden and it's remote. I think me and Mary are the only two people, my next door neighbor, who sees that boat launch. And if they're residents, it's great. I love seeing residents down there. I say hello and I'm on my dock, but I don't recognize a lot of the people. And they fish and they also launch boats from there that I don't think have beach tags.
They
It's not
swim.
very well monitored.
They swim too.
Yeah, and they ripped off the plaque for the rebuilding of Roaring Brook Landing. Did you notice that, Jonathan?
I didn't notice that, no.
Yeah, they vandalized it. I was just there yesterday.
All right.
They ripped the whole
That's
plaque
terrible.
off.
That's a Boy Scout project.
I know.
Yeah.
How could somebody do
Right.
that? How could
ripped it.
somebody do that?
They ripped it down.
We should put that back up. That is terrible.
It is. I have a picture. I'll post it.
Okay. Yeah, we did put a chain up this year on that beach for the first time, and I don't know whether it's helped or not, because there's definitely more pressure this year, and I definitely agree with you, Jonathan, that the pressure is big on the lifeguard beaches, but even bigger on the sort of less peopled beaches, the boat launches.
Yeah.
And Lynn, I'm sorry, I do agree with you that we should have car tags. I think it's going to help a lot, and I think we can help by doing some of Michael's idea leafleting, and also by maybe having a official fine that is for trespassing and illegal.
I would add, Ina, that if some person is putting a leaflet on a car windshield, take a picture of that car's license plate. You know, if there's only one car there that day and you find that leaflet on the ground, you know who did it.
Yeah.
Or even the leaflet could say, we recognize this automobile with a license plate doesn't have a car tag. Next time they'll be ticketed.
Right.
So that the person is at least realizes that they're being called out.
Yeah, if we have a ticket and
I
a
agree
fine,
they don't know.
then that's better. We don't have that right now. I mean,
Yeah.
Hats off to Mike Mikulski for really pointing this out. But it's on all the signs, but it's not in the district code.
Yeah.
It's very necessary that we make that change.
Yeah, that has to be changed.
I think unfortunately going forward, this is almost like in the category of trash removal. It's not going to get better unless we do something about it. And car tags and beach tags are a way to start. And then hopefully if the town will allow us to do more than that from a ticketing standpoint, that would have a great impact.
Mm-hmm.
I have license plates, take pictures.
Okay. So do we want to have another poll on whether we should have car tags? It sounds like that's pretty unanimous. Is that right?
I think there was a poll.
There was.
Oh,
There's a poll right now for the tag.
oh,
checker.
should we investigate having a tag checker?
Would this be a separate person, separate from the lake superintendent, or could this include expanding the lake superintendent's responsibilities to include tag checking?
Either or.
Got to come in through the parking lot.
Is there another thing to check off?
I checked it off. It's important.
Okay. So there's a pretty good sentiment that we should investigate looking into having a tag checker. And so I think we'll do that. And Meg, Megan, Drew, maybe you'll help to put me in touch with the person at Oscawana. Maybe I could talk with her too about how that's done.
Also, Lake Peekskill has another system different from Oscawana. You might want to talk
Lake
to that.
Peekskill is 900 homes, and every beach is completely fenced off, and they have a person sitting at a desk at the entrance to the beach. It's really different than either Oscawana or Roaring Brook Lake. Okay. And then are people in favor of doing a project to see if we can remove some of the derelict boats and the unused boats from our boat launches? Yeah. I think it's that will be a good thing. Are people in favor of continuing to fund the lake manager and lake management?
Yes.
I have a question about the lake management. So far, in the time that we've been here, I don't think we've taken any specific mitigation or amelioration actions. We've just been monitoring over the past decade or so. Am I correct? Other than the carp, which went in right before.
Before we did monitoring, really, but
it's just been monitoring, correct?
Yes.
So at what point do you
out? So the septic pump out was passed in 2016. 2017 was the year that there were trucks going around the lake all the time. And then 2018 was intermediate kind of a year on the lake. 2019 and 2020 have been two of our best lake quality years.
So at what point do you say we've done a lot of monitoring? Can we determine any next action steps that we need to take? Or do we just keep spending $30,000 a year to just keep checking?
No, I don't think we should just spend $30,000 to keep checking. But I think that if you don't do the I think we will be doing actions and we will be talking about them. But if we don't do the monitoring, we really don't have a good handle on what we're doing. And hopefully we'll be making interventions soon, but I don't think we should be rushing to do an intervention. Most of the interventions are very, are expensive, and you should be sure that what you're doing is going to have some positive impact, some bang for its buck.
Well, that's absolutely true. But there are a lot of interventions like the septic pump out that are really terrestrial, that are not in the lake. And exactly. There are more things that we could be doing on land that would have an impact on the lake. And I think those are the interventions we should be looking at before we look at doing anything in the lake.
Totally agree. And one of the things that AJ has done is to measure storm runoff specifically in the different inlets, and so that we can identify more problematic versus less problematic inlets, and that really may help us with knowing where to put our, if we're going to put in either green or gray stormwater management, then let's know where the best place is to put that.
Peter, should I dump the ice? Dump the ice.
Yeah.
And I'm going to guess that everybody would be in favor of putting some money into signage. Is that right? That our signs are very old and they
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
The signs are also way too wordy. I don't think you have to stand there and read it in order to see what it says. They should be much simpler and really grab attention. No, I don't think anyone ever reads those signs.
Yes.
That's something I would volunteer to help with too.
That would be great, Michael. That would be really great. Fabulous.
If we had something in the law, we could say, parking by permit only vehicles will be towed. That's it. But we got to get
Right.
that law changed.
Yeah, and by saying by permit only, it makes it very specific. It's not residents only. Well, I'm a resident. It's you have, and what we talked about last night in the board meeting was having a tag that hangs from your windshield, and that each household would have a certain number of those tags, and that you therefore would know, you know, whether it was. But it wouldn't identify the car or make people feel paranoid or, you know, worried about people knowing where they lived. So it wouldn't exactly be a sticker. It would be a card that hangs from the windshield. But, you know, the wording of the sign could be that you need to have your permit showing. Okay. Anything else that people think ought to be budgeted?
I just want to ask a question about trash collection.
Yes.
And whether, I'm just curious how much that breaks down to per household, and whether if we were to negotiate independently, it would be less of a financial burden.
Well, if we just divided it by 300, it comes out less than the cost of getting trash by individually, of going out and getting it. However, it's actually it's by property value, because it's a percentage of the property tax. So it's a little different than that. I don't think that would be a cost saving thing, but I think there could be ways in which we begin to talk about solid waste management as a community, so that people really individually begin to decrease their trash and, you know, begin composting, begin, you know, reusing their newspapers and maybe their cardboard in their gardens. You know, there are lots of things that can reduce this, actually. Not hugely, but, and then you can possibly even begin to think about motivating people by charging differentially if you have a lot of trash. That a lot of communities have done that.
One thing I wanted to ask about, Ina, is one year we had brush removal. That I thought was a really nice thing, because I was hoped that it would discourage people from dumping in the wetlands and dumping in the district properties. If you walk around the beach, you see a lot of the public areas, especially near Park Beach, are just filled with, and near North Beach also, right near you, filled with yard waste that people, you know, haul over there and dump. And I guess it's the landscapers who are doing it because they think it's okay. But if we had a brush removal option, the way we did that one year, then maybe people could be encouraged not to do that, because
Yeah,
that's
Lynn, I just asked the same question. Yeah.
Oh, good.
I
It's very
think that would be
unsightly. The district properties look awful. They're in really bad shape as landscape goes, as native environments go. They're ecologically terrible, and one way to improve them is to just get people to stop dumping their yard waste there. So we give them an option to have it collected.
Yeah, so every year we get, or many years, we get an early HAB, just as the, just before the trees leaf out. And that's usually because the wetlands, the spring rains have come, the wetlands are, you know, discharging into the lake, but they're not, their roots and so on are not active, they're not pulling up nutrients, so they are still discharging nutrients into the lake. And the more nutrients that people put in those piles, the more nutrients are going to eventually get into the lake. And then the second thing is that people put their pachysandra in those, you know, just as an example, and other things in those in those.
Forsythia prunings. People dump piles of forsythia and they root right there in the wetlands.
Yeah, yeah, so exactly. So I would be in favor of that. Do we want to run a poll on that? Doing a brush collection once in the fall?
Sure.
Would the fall be the right time to do it? What would you think, Lynn?
Well, I mean, especially this year when we've had this storm, this massive storm, and more to come. I guess the fall is a good time. What we did that year I'm referring to was everybody brought their brush over to Park Beach. I would suggest that everybody just pile their brush in front of their houses, and the truck go around and collect from each house. And you say you can have a pile that's maybe 4 feet by 4 feet by 4 feet or something. We decide whatever the removal company, you know, will collect based on you know, how we distribute the cost. And then people can leave their piles in front of their houses. They can accumulate it over time, and then the truck comes through and picks it all up, and it's gone.
Any comments?
Yes, I have a comment. I don't think you want people accumulating brush in front of their properties over time. I don't think you meant that, Lynn.
Well, this is the way it's done in towns, in municipalities where they do it. And
I know we would have brush building up for weeks all along the road. I don't think we want that.
Well, then I guess it can be accumulated, you know, someplace else on the property. But I think that having to haul it to Park Beach was an impediment to a lot of people. I mean, it's better than nothing. We could continue to do it that way.
Or just set a finite time period then, but you can't have they have bringing brush up there. It would be a nightmare. After we're trying to keep this property looking well and looking clean, this would be something going on for a period of time that would not be acceptable.
Yeah, we can do it like bulk pickup when we, you know, a week before bulk pickup, you put it out and have it disposed of.
Yeah, either the week before or the week after,
right.
So that it sort of comes at the same time. That's a great idea. Okay.
Yeah. While we're talking about waste removal, is there any way we can hold whether we use the same carting company or find competitive bids and find someone else, hold them to a standard of not placing those bins that they pick up automatically in the road? It's so dangerous. Plus, so many of them are unclosed. And a lot of people are weekenders. They leave Sunday night. Those bins are probably sitting open with rainwater collecting during the week, which attracts mosquitoes. I mean, just from a safety and health point of view.
I think as part of the cost savings of the automatic pickup, the bin is not designed to reclose.
Mm-hmm.
So for the driver to get out and close each lid, it's probably going to be an additional expense.
Yeah. I mean, they originally had told us that the bins would close with the arm, with the electronic arm.
Don't get dressed
This is okay. We're
for the
going for a
day.
walk.
Okay.
No, not for the day. We'll be up for a walk and then we're supposed to be Canary afterwards.
Okay. Well, I think we've covered a lot. I hope people will come to the budget meeting. I will put that information up on the internet. I just want to say that I hope people enjoyed the meeting about invasives. Brent is really such a good lecturer and so knowledgeable about these things. I think, you know, the majority of our land is, you know, is held privately. The public lands are a minority of it. So everybody working on their own private land would really make a big difference, and helping to spread the word, to educate the people around you and say, you know, you didn't realize it, but this is garlic mustard, and, you know, let me show you how easy it is to pull or something. I think that right now is a very, very good time to either weed whack or mow the stiltweed. It has not started seeding yet, but it's grown high enough that it's going to be hard for it to really put out a new stem and a seeder now, between now and the fall. So there's kind of a window of time. If you cut it too early, it will just grow up and, you haven't pulled its roots and it's going to just grow up. One of the problems with the stiltweed is that the weeds are, there are 1,000 weeds for every plant or something like that. So it's an enormously prolific weed maker, and the weeds last a long time in the weed bank, 7 to 10 years. So even if we were to miraculously eradicate all seeding, we would still have 7 to 10 years of stiltgrass coming up. If there's a piece of land, near your home or across the street from your home, or, near a beach that has that sort of stiltgrass margin on it, the edge of the road, if you have a weed whacker, go out and cut it, because it really makes a difference. Are there people who would like to volunteer to work on the public lands? I know Lynn had mentioned that she would like to, and I'll talk to you later, Lynn. Anybody else? Okay. Well, contact me privately if you would like to.
There's a couple of responses in chat.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. Good. Good. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for coming. Any other comments? Anything else anybody wants to add? You've hung in there for a long time. You've been terrific, and I just appreciate it so much. And hopefully we'll have at least one more, maybe more than that, of virtual meetings. Maybe we'll continue the virtual meetings over the winter, I'm not sure. And then hopefully next summer we will begin having real life meetings.
That would be nice. Ina, thank you so much for everything you do.
Yeah, thanks, Ina.
My pleasure.